The Frog and the Nightingale. This poem is by the poet Vikram Seth. He is a very famous poet already, so we know quite a lot about his other poems as well. So this poem, that is The Frog and the Nightingale, is by Vikram Seth. This is an apologue. The poem uses a knavish frog and a gullible nightingale to aesthetically present a parody on the modern society. You know, parodies, these days the situations that are going on in a society is what is the poet is trying to represent via his poem. So the story revolves around the nightingale, immensely gifted and equally insecure, shamelessly exploited by a devious frog. It ultimately resulted in the demise of the bird, that is the nightingale, with the frog regaining his earlier stature as the bog's sole singer. Do you know about bog? Bog is the place where the animals or the birds and all live. So it was a place in the forest where all these used to live. So the summary starts somewhat like this. Once upon a time there lived a frog under a sumac tree in a fictitious place called the Bengal Bog. So this place where all these were living is known as Bengal Bog. So probably it can be called as an address of them. Under the false pretense that he was sensational and melodious singer, he blessed his fellow creatures with his voice day after day. His crassy cacophony was despised by the others. You know, all of us have heard this frog's voice, right? And how he makes those sounds. But he was so proud of himself that he used to bless others, or you can call it he used to torture others by singing every day. They tried very hard to get rid of him, but all the sticks and the stones failed to shatter the presumptuous frog's illusion. Now this was some kind of an illusion on frog's face or frog's mind that he is a wonderful singer and nobody could be better than him. So he went on singing to his heart's content until and unless he feels like feeling content, okay, all right, I have done enough for the day and I have been wonderfully good. Till that time he would not stop. So it was all his own wish. One fine moonlit night, a beautiful nightingale came and perched on the sumac tree, casting forth her melody. Every single life form in the bog, including the frog, was sitting flabbergasted. They were terribly shocked to hear such a wonderful noise in that place, because the people who used to stay there, that is the other animals, including this frog, have been so habitual about hearing only that frog's voice. So it was very much shocking for all of them to get to hear a beautiful voice, and that was of the nightingale. Next was that everybody was amazed by the bird's talents. After that, absolutely entranced by the song, all the creatures were gazing at her. Definitely all the creatures were so shocked to see who was this person or who is this creature who is singing so beautifully. They all were gazing at her, captivated and enthralled by the utterly divine melody. They urged her to keep on going, and she was singing so good that rest of them were just motivating her to continue a little more. They moved closer and applauded and flattered the bird, went on until dawn. They kept on flattering that bird for so long that it was almost dawn. The following night she perched on the sumac tree once more and was sitting up when right out of nowhere the cunning frog croaked. So again it was the next night, and the nightingale got so nice response from all the people around that she again started singing. But this time the frog was not satisfied and he could not let that happen. It was hurting his ego probably that why it's instead of me, like this is my place and this is my own place where I sing, right? How can somebody else come over here and start singing? So it was probably just hurting his ego or somewhat like that. So he was just here to stop her. He presented himself to be a fairly eminent personality, like, you know, I am a very much personified person and I am very much experienced in my field. So he was portraying somewhat that kind of a character. He rolled his glib tongue on and on. So he continued talking. He claimed to own the sumac tree, to be far famed for his splendid baritone, and a music critic who wrote for the bog trumpet. So what he talked about himself is actually unacceptable and unimaginable. He called himself that he is the owner of that sumac tree, and he is the one who is a very big music expert who writes for the music magazine, that is the bog trumpet. So he himself made his own image, a very false image in front of that nightingale. So what happened next? Blanched to be conversing with such a superior personality, the nightingale asked him how he had liked her song. Now, this nightingale was so foolish, you can say, or was so simple, was not at all clever, that she could not understand the game that is being played by that frog. So she finally got trapped and she asked, okay, you are such a superior personality already, so can you tell me, how did I sing? How was my performance? And that was the time frog got the opportunity to just pull her down. To answer this, the frog put all his role playing into effect and started nitpicking. Nitpicking means picking up the small mistakes out of all. So the simple-minded bird contended with just the fact that critic of such a note had discussed her singing, became flustered and remarked that at least the song was her own, but the harsh and envious frog ruthlessly discarded her. Now over here, he has already started taking out all the mistakes in her performance, but still the little nightingale was so innocent that she could not get it, and what she did was that she was actually feeling a bit of flatterness all around her, that she has been judged, her singing has been judged by such a big personality. Still, the frog was not getting sufficient. So he offered to train her and convinced that without his guidance, she would never be anything more than a novice. Now what game he played? The trick he played was that he asked the nightingale, why don't you start getting trained under me? Otherwise, you will not be able to become better. You will be remaining like this all your life. So, hearing this, the nightingale became ecstatic and referred to the frog as Mozart in disguise. Now, Mozart means a big person who is actually readily available. So, he was a very big personality for the nightingale, and in disguise means not in real manner but in some or the other face. So, he was a Mozart in disguise means he was a Mozart, he was a very big personality who has come to help her out, but in a different way. So, because he was a frog, that is why she called her that. But in reality, the crafty frog could not care less about her hopes and dreams. He charged her a high fee for the training too. So, just imagine, here the frog was already trying to demotivate the bird that her singing is not that good enough. And over that, what he did was, he started charging a huge amount too. That is disgusting. Have you ever met any person doing that? If I would meet, I would definitely not bear him like that. Anyways, the gullible nightingale now flushed with confidence and sang with all her heart and grew to be a sensation. So many creatures from the vicinity of the bog constellated towards the charming sound. So the gullible nightingale was very much confident now, and she used to sing with all her heart, because now she was so happy that she is being trained by a frog, right? And she is definitely going to be a sensation very soon, as per what the frog has asked her. The wily frog exploited her talent and minted money for himself by charging admission. So this time frog was started making this money also from the taking of admission of that nightingale. The next morning, although the weather was unfavorable, the wicked frog slyly convinced the bird to come out of her house and made her practice vigorously up and down the musical scale for 6 hours. 6 long hours, and it was a very bad weather day already. Even then, the frog had convinced the bird or the nightingale to come out of her house and start practicing. So she was made to practice for more than 6 hours. Imagine. Though the nightingale was incredibly fatigued in the night, her voice revived. A tidal crowd flocked the sumac tree. The frog watched them joyously, charging them money, but also with a nagging feeling of envy, wishing that it was him they appreciated. Now what happened with frog was that nightingale was incredibly singing during the night and the tree, but due to which the crowd around her gathered a lot, and the frog had started to charge money even from those crowd members. That's disgusting. Anyways, this frog was very much selfish for himself. So though he was taking money from the nightingale to train her, from the people who are coming to watch her performance, even then he was feeling very envious inside him that he should be present at the place of the nightingale and all these people should have gathered to watch his performance and not that nightingale's. So you see how selfish was this frog. Even after all this, the frog did not stop depreciating the helpless bird. Means he continued to just try and demotivate that bird as much as is possible. He incessantly scolded her harshly and insisted on making her song fancier and jauntier. So he was just always taking out the mistakes and telling the corrections to be made every time he hears it. So he provided all sorts of destructive criticism and rendered her helpless by pointing out how he was obliging her by his exclusive training. So he was in all possible ways trying to just demotivate her, just make her performance bad and worse as much as possible, and that also this was done above the fact that he was charging a lot for this exclusive sort of a training. So the nightingale followed his words like quotes from the Bible and turned her song and her singing into something so banal that it could no longer involve the audience. Now as per, she was following her teacher so much, so by heart, as if we follow the Bible, that she had completely converted her way of singing into the way that frog used to teach her. So now she no more had that a lot of audience like she had earlier. This led to her meltdown as she was now addicted to applause. Now she was starting to feeling demotivated because earlier she was singing and she continued to do this only because of the motivation from the people. But now this frog made her sound so bad that there were not even crowd around her. So the frog went berserk with the rage now. He lashed out at the poor bird. He asked her to renew her song. Terrified to fail, the nightingale tried her best, but the training, taking a toll on her, burst a vein and died. The frog was so angry on her that you are not doing so well. The people have started to just stop coming to your place to hear. Now what is your performance going on? So the nightingale was so much fearful about this and so scared of this that she still continued to practice so on, and due to which she had bursted her vein and unfortunately she died. So this frog is actually making the other person feeling let down. He wanted to become superior, and for that he made his own story about himself so that he can portray himself as a superior person to the nightingale. And when he was successfully involved in that, he didn't stop. He started charging from the nightingale and started training her. After that, when the nightingale used to sing beautifully and when people used to gather all her around, he used to charge even from those people. So out of all this, he was making money, definitely, as well as he was just destroying the performance, destroying the quality of that nightingale continuously. Slowly and slowly what happened, he was so rude and he was so mean that due to his excessive pressure, this nightingale had bursted her wing and she died. So that was about the frog and the nightingale.